Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Turning Point podcast, and this is a little bit of a different intro than what you'd normally come to expect. That's because recently Lewin and myself, we got a recurring guest, Jacob, onto the show to talk about the Last of Us TV show, and that's what this episode's going to be. But our recording session for that ended up going for about 4 hours, maybe a little bit longer. We talked about a lot, and I mean a lot of different stuff. And the recording is just way too long, and I don't have as much time right now to really go through that 4 hours and edit it. So what I've decided to do instead is I've decided to split that recording up into 2 episodes. So first up is going to be our Last of Us Spoilercast. That's what this episode is going to cover. Lou and Jacob and myself will go over our thoughts on the show, and we talk about kind of, I guess, our thoughts on the games. We also have like a little bit of video game adaptation talk in there as well. I think it's a really interesting conversation. I've cut it down a little bit, and then next episode we'll cover the rest of the stuff that we talked about. So anyway, I hope you guys do enjoy this Last of Us spoiler cast. The next episode will be out probably within the next week or so. I'll try and get it out as soon as possible so we can get another proper episode out again soon. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and enjoy the Last of Us spoiler cast. Recently, we've all been watching The Last of Us, the HBO Max show. So I wanted to jump over to you guys and see kind of like where you're at with The Last of Us show, how you feel about it. Obviously, you guys have both replayed The Last of Us recently with The Last of Us Part 1 when it released on PS5.
I'm up to Pittsburgh, so I'm not that far. Jacob would be the one to defer to here.
Yeah, but like
I've beaten it 3 times since it came out on PS5.
Yeah, so like I guess I want to see like for me the big thing was the fact that it's releasing on PC and the show is coming out at the same time. It was kind of like, which one do I do? And obviously the PC ports kind of fucked. So it's going to be a while before I replay it again. So I'm kind of glad that kind of worked out that way, because it means I could play other things and I can put a bit of distance between the show and when I replay the game again. As both of you have played it a lot more recently, so it's a lot more, I guess, fresh in your minds. How do we feel about the Last of Us show, and like kind of how it not just works as an adaptation, but I guess, you know, just as a show on its own. How are we feeling about it? Where are we kind of at with that right now?
Very satisfied.
I would agree. I have my begrudging points against the show, which I wasn't expecting, but as a whole, I enjoy the show coming off the game.
Yeah, like I'm pretty much the same. Like I probably started the show, the very first episode was kind of like, how do I describe this? I like finished it and I was like, yeah, like it's The Last of Us, you know what I mean? Like I was kind of like, yeah, like it's, you know, it's whatever. And so for me, I didn't really, I don't like watching shows week to week anyway. So I was just kind of like, it's, you know, I've played the game a number of times. It doesn't really matter if I don't watch this week to week. And so I didn't watch it week to week. I literally watched it all in like the space of a few days. But yeah, I know I kind of finished that first episode just being kind of like, whatever about it. Like it's more, it's The Last of Us. I think it does what it needs to do as an adaptation. It did a good job, but I was like, it's whatever. Like, to me, I just like that first, and we talked about this episode on the last episode, Lewin. Actually, we did like a little preview. You know, like, to me, the first episode didn't really do anything that was better than the game. And so I was just kind of like, it's whatever, you know, it's The Last of Us, it's good. Like, to me, I didn't think, like, the Sarah stuff was fine, but, like...
I liked all of the Sarah stuff,
yeah. Yeah, like, it's fine, like, it's good, but, like, to me, I was just kind of like, you could just take it out, and I don't really think it would be that different. But, I mean, at the end of the day, like, the actual stuff that was adapted from the games and the stuff that was changed from the games in that episode, my kind of general thoughts were, you know, I think the streamlining of the story, there was like, parts of that episode that kind of streamlined that game, the opening parts of that game quite a bit. And I was kind of like, you know what, I think that works fine for a TV version. I think it gets the story moving a bit quicker, and you know, it's fine. To me, a lot of the added stuff was just kind of like whatever. Like, there was the bit with the kid at the start, which I was just like, why are we watching this? And then last episode, Lewin told me that it's the kid that Joel throws into the flames. And I was like, is it? Like, is that what that's meant to be? So suddenly that scene made more sense to me when Lewin said that last episode, because I'm like, why the fuck did we just spend 10 minutes on this fucking scene with this kid? For no reason.
Well, it's like 3 minutes. It's a bit pedantic.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's fine. Like, why are we spending so much time with this when we could just, like, it has nothing to do with anything? And then Lewin said, oh, yeah, it's because Joe falls in the fire. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense now. But, like, it's the other stuff, like, the street, like, I didn't think the scenes with Tess at the start there, I was kind of like, whatever about them. Like, I'm like, you can skip these. There's nothing really there. And I'm going to be honest, I kind of felt that way for the first couple of episodes. I kind of felt... those first few episodes, I think episode 2 and 3, I was just kind of like whatever about it. I was watching it and I'm like, there's not a single thing that happens in this that's better. And I'm going to also agree that for the most part, that's pretty much the way across the series for me personally. I don't think there's a single moment in this series that the game doesn't do better. But some of the new stuff I did like the kind of prequel scenes at the beginning of the first 2 episodes. I thought they were really good.
I very much enjoy those.
They were fantastic, yeah.
What else was it that I was going to say that I liked? I actually am going to be honest. I will think, you know how I've just been harping on about how there's not a single moment that's better in the games, that's better than in the games. I do think Sarah's death scene probably is as good as the game. I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Actually, well, I will say a couple of times as we progress further and further through the series, I do think there are some aspects of the show that are an improvement on the game, in my opinion. But like, when I look at an adaptation like this, it's kind of like when you see a film adaptation of a book, right? You go, I don't need this to try and be better. All I want to do is, when you're translating this story from one medium to another, I want to be able to show this to other people who won't experience the original. Like, you could probably imagine like our parents who have like read I don't know, Lord of the Rings or something, and be like, but I can't get you to read this because you fucking won't do it. But the Peter Jackson movies, you'll watch those, and it's like, I don't need the Peter Jackson movies to be better than the book. I just need you to be like, do you understand why this story is so important? And that's the whole thing with the adaptation, is like, I don't need it to be better. I just need to be able to look at the story as a whole, as in this medium, and go, okay, the point of the game is carefully preserved. It's a little different, and it might not be quite as good, but all I wanted was it to be carefully preserved and go, okay, you've done it correctly. It's the one thing that other adaptations like Max Payne movie or something like that just completely miss the fucking point on, and then just go, oh yeah, we'll do it fucking like a mid-2000s like boring ass slow-mo thing. I'm like, that's not, you've missed the entire point of the game then. Whereas like this show is like, okay, finally you've done what Lord of the Rings did with the Peter Jackson movies, or what a bunch of the Harry Potter movies did. You just took the source material and go, how do we translate this from one medium to the next, and don't fuck it up? How about we just preserve the reason why it's so important in the first place? So I don't need it to be better. It's just that if it's done correctly, I'm like, good, great. That's all I asked from you.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. I think that's a perfect way to look at the Last of Us show as well. Like, ultimately, like, we've got to remember with this is that at the end of the day, the show isn't made for us. You know, it's not made for the fans. Like, it's like with anything. Like, it's made to bring it to the new audience. And yeah, sure, you know, it's good to have Neil Druckmann involved, obviously, and you know, it's good to have those nods to the fans and like the things that they do for the fans in there. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the show is designed to be for a new audience. It's designed to be for people. Like, the target audience for this show is people who have never played the game.
This is for people who will sit around the water cooler on a Friday afternoon and go, oh, did you see that? And you're like, oh, yeah. So it's created this word of mouth craze, and you're like, damn. The game did that, but, like, differently.
None of that. Like, when I'm saying, like, oh, the show doesn't do anything, like, it's not a criticism of the show, per se. It's more just, like, you know, it's kind of what I said to Lewin before the show aired, it's kind of like no matter, at least from my perspective, and the show kind of proved me right when I finished watching it. I was kind of like, yeah, like I still hold this same opinion. Is no matter how good the show is, it's irrelevant how good or bad the show is. It's always going to be an inferior version of the story. Compared to the game, like the game is always going to be the better version of the story, and that's why like when I say I'm never going to watch the show again, it's because I'm just gonna play the game. You know, like if I want, I want to experience that story, I'll just play the game to do it rather than watch the show. But I am glad that I watched the show. You know, like
Yeah, same.
But also, you also got to think, like, not only is that just our opinion, but like, for example, you ask anyone that has read Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter before the film adaptations come out, and they'll tell you the book was better. Just like we're saying the game is better. But then you'll look at like people like our age who have grown up watching those films, and they're like, oh yeah, but like the nostalgia for those films makes me like them more. And that's this. I imagine the exact same thing is going to happen with this show. Is that people are going to get into the games through the show, and they're probably going to prefer the show because that's what they watched first.
Daddy Pedro Pascal's not in game. Why wrong?
I mean, look, give it time, and he will be. I'm sure the modders will make sure that happens, if they haven't already, of course.
I mean, they put this Tobey Maguire Spider-Man costume in Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man, so anything's possible.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the good thing about it coming to PC, right? Is we're gonna get Last of Us mods, so very excited for that.
Absolutely.
What about you, Lewin?
I would agree with you, Laura, that I don't think I would rewatch it again, because it is in many ways too similar to the game, where I can just go play the game to get my kick. But that's it. It's a series where I will cherry pick episodes to watch, like Bill's episode, or no, I wouldn't watch Left Behind again, to be honest. I fucking hate that episode. What's the other
It's
bottle
funny
episode,
about
really?
it's funny about Left Behind is it's really hard for me to criticize because I didn't really like that episode either. But it's really hard for me to criticize that because I don't really remember the DLC that well enough to know whether it's like the DLC or not. So I'm just like when I talk about this show, I'm just forgetting about that episode altogether. Like I'm just gonna be like, no, it's fine. We're not talking about that because I just don't remember it well enough. I haven't pplayed it in literally a decade. You know?
Well, what I love about that episode, to kind of just give you a comparison to what it is to the game, is like in terms, because there's two different storylines in the DLC. There's the flashback sequences in a mall with Riley, and then there's present day sequences in a mall looking for a first aid kit. And I'm just happy that the episode just got rid of all of the current day storyline where you have trying to find a first aid kit for Joel, because there is no fucking story in those levels. And it's like, oh cool, it's just an hour of like all flashbacks.
That was a thing. I only remember
exactly. Yeah, I said that to my brother, and he goes, I completely forgot that there was a fucking current day storyline in that DLC.
Do you know what's funny?
I'm like, yeah.
I genuinely have no idea what you're talking about. So
see,
I would say there's like a solid 3 episodes of that series I will probably pick up and watch again, just on the factor of wanting to watch them. But as a series as a whole, it's going to be a long time before I actually just go episode 1 to 9 or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird because, like, I genuinely have no plans to ever watch it again. Unless, like you said, Jacob, I'm maybe showing it to someone, I guess, who's never played the game. But
yeah, like I did, yeah,
like maybe
because I watched it week to week as they came out, and then when all 9 episodes came out, I went to my parents' house and I showed them.
Yeah, I watched it with my partner.
I've seen it all
as we
twice.
went along, and she's only played up to Pittsburgh in the game, so for the most part, everything is fresh for her.
I can watch it again because I don't see, because I obviously do still prefer the game, and there are problems in the show that don't exist in the game. But there's also some problems in the game that they fixed in the show that I'm hoping to get to. But it's not an either or. I can have both of them. It's kind of like when you have a playlist of songs and it's like, oh, here's an original song and here's a cover by a band that I really like. Like, this is a cool related topic. Depeche Mode is on the soundtrack for the show, and I'd imagine, Laura, you like the cover of Depeche Mode's was it Enjoy the Silence by
Lacuna Coil? Yes.
Lacuna Coil more than the original, and it's like that's a preference that a lot of people are going to have with this show. And it's like, oh, you can have your preferences where, oh, I like the show better. Oh, I like the game better. I'm like, yeah, I like the game better. But I'm like, I can enjoy the cover just as much. It's just, it's a little different, that's all. Same, the flavor, different flavor.
I don't want to, like, get too in-depth on, like, episode by episode. What are some kind of, like, standout moments that are from the games that you really enjoyed the show's adaptation of? Whether it's better or not doesn't really matter. Just, like, what are some moments where you're like, that was in the games, but, like, that's, like, they adapted that specific part really well into the show. And it could be, like, a specific moment, or it could be, like, how a storyline from the games has been kind of woven into the, I guess, kind of new storyline of the show, I guess. That's what I'm kind of asking.
To be honest, for the most part, I actually didn't find any problem with a lot of the way the moments were adapted, and so I can kind of enjoy pretty much every scene almost as much as the games version, and there are some that are even better. For example, the like last few scenes with Henry and Sam, I actually think are better in the show.
I would agree on that one.
Because how did that take place in the game? That moment?
They escape Pittsburgh. They go through the sewers. Somewhere along the line of escaping the back end of the sewer, Sam gets bit. They get to the house past the suburb. Oh no, he might have gotten bit in the suburbs.
Yeah.
And then we cut to the morning. Ellie freaks the fuck out. Sam tries to kill her, and then Henry kills Sam and then himself.
Yeah, we don't have that whole like middle scene with Ellie, right? Like that's new to the show, right?
That's new to the show.
Yeah.
I thought as much. So I remember watching it, and I'm like, I remember watching it. I'm like, I don't quite remember this.
Well, the dialogue where they're like, dialogue is just writing on a board, but the words that they write on the board are actually dialogue in the game because, of course, Sam wasn't deaf in the game. But like, apart from like that little detail, it's like the last few scenes, the only real difference besides the fact that they use boards for Sam's dialogue and not speech is that Sam doesn't reveal that he's bit, and in the show he does. And then there's like this great thing where it's like, in the game, Sam and Ellie are kind of the same age. Sam's a little younger, but it's more like a friendship. Whereas they make a point in the show where Joel says, "Oh, it's easier for kids because they don't have someone relying on them." And because Sam is younger than Ellie in the show, she kind of tries to take on a caring responsibility for Sam. So when he dies, or when he reveals that he's bitten, there's more emotional damage done to Ellie that way, which I thought was a nice touch in the game. Was that?
Huh? I was just memeing, don't worry about it. You said emotional damage, it reminded me of the meme.
Emotional damage.
So yeah, I did enjoy that. I think while the choice to make Sam deaf in the show doesn't drastically change things, like I think a lot of people think it does, I do love that he is significantly younger, because the younger the kid is, the more sad it is when he dies. And I actually think the scene where he's turned and attacks Ellie, I think is way more devastating in the show, because in the game, when Henry turns the gun on himself, it cuts to Joel's reaction, and it's supposed to be like a, oh shit, like if this can spook the hell out of Joel, like that's pretty messed up. But in the show, they cut it to Ellie's reaction instead, and the sound that Bella makes is like haunting. And I'm like, oh well, all right.
What about the I'm just trying to remember because it has been the last time I played the game was before part 2 came out.
Part 2 came out, yeah.
And I can't remember, but that whole like subplot in the middle of the season, the middle of the show, when they're in the city there with like all those other characters, is that in the game or not? Because I can't remember if that's like a subplot in the game. Because I know there's like
everything focused on.
Because I know there's like the people that are trying to
on...
kill them when they meet.
And they don't have any character development in the game. But most of the things with Joel and Ellie, Henry and Sam, they're very similar. But like Melanie Linsky's character of Kathleen and Perry and all that, they're all original to the show.
Yeah, so it's like, because I was watching all those bits and I'm like, are these people in the game at all? Like, did I just miss them? Like, what? I don't remember this at all. So that's why I wanted to get your ask about that. The other thing I want to ask, speaking of the Left Behind DLC, is just judging purely on the show, okay, like ignoring the game for a second. That episode of the show is what we would call a filler episode, and it happens at a point in the time where like it's kind of this weird thing when you watch it, right? It just like grinds the story to a halt. Obviously, it's very important for Ellie's character, of course, but I'm just talking about narratively where it sits in the story. It kind of grinds the plot just to a halt for no real reason. What I want to check in with you guys, because I can't quite remember, is does it take place roughly around the same time in the game? Because like I said, I haven't played the Left Behind DLC literally since it came out, so...
where it's slotted in the show is pretty much exactly where it's slotted in the game.
Right, yeah, okay. Because I wasn't going to criticize that for the show if it's something that happened in the game, but I was just...
But of course, naturally, the DLC came out months after the game did. So...
Oh yeah, the DLC came out. Didn't the DLC come out... Oh no, it came out on PS3 first, actually, and then it was bundled with the remastered. Because that's when I played it. I played it when it was bundled with the remastered, and I got that. But yeah, like that was in 2014, so that was a long time ago. I haven't played it since, but I've replayed the game several times, so that's why I just wanted to check in where that took place, because to me it just felt like a fucking filler episode that grinded the story.
Honestly, even with it in the right place, it does.
Yeah, it kind of does. Like it just feels very out of place, and that's one of the things I wanted to like mention with the pacing of the show, is they kind of spend the first few episodes kind of going through that early part of the story really slowly. Like obviously they've cut parts out of that, and like I was saying, they like streamlined kind of some of that story to kind of get through it quickly. But then you have like the Bill episode, which spends like half its runtime on a completely different story, and like to me that is a filler episode as well. And like to me, I just feel like the later parts of the series kind of start to kind of rush through the story, like not like rush through it a lot, but like it starts to move at a bit of a quicker pace than those first few episodes, and it makes me personally, just as someone who's, remember, I'm just talking solely about the series here, nothing to do with the game. I just watch it and I just feel like there's so much screen time that could have been spent on the actual story rather than on these additional side stories that have very little to do with what's actually going on. So I wanted to kind of get your guys' view. That's kind of like my take on it, but I wanted to get like your guys' thoughts on those filler episodes and kind of where you sit with that.
So
I wasn't disappointed at all with that, because there's more to a story than just plot, right? So I think as far as all the scenes that focus on the main plot at hand and this journey that they're going on, I think it devoted just enough it devoted all the time that it needed without dragging on too long. But like in terms of those 2 filler episodes, it's like all the scenes in those episodes are important for thematic reasons. So like the relationship between Joel and Ellie throughout the rest of the season is so much stronger because you're seeing almost a whole episode about Bill and Frank. It's not like this thing where it's like, oh, I guess you just have to kind of just take their word for it. There's more emotional investment when you see more hope out of these other characters and have them trying to pass on those lessons to the characters you're following throughout the entire season. And it just makes the whole story more thematically rich for it, rather than have it be so simple, which I don't mind, but I think it's better this way, where they make the world rich at the same time, and then there's more grander themes following other people that enrich the main plot line that we're following. So yeah, that's just basically my opinion on those 2 episodes.
I'm probably gonna actually, weirdly enough for me, go the opposite way.
Wow.
I don't think it enriched the world. I don't find that it enriched Ellie and Joel. By the end of the series, I was kind of confused that Joel had picked up the fatherly role as much as he had. In the game, it's a no-brainer. I'm like, oh yeah, damn. He sees Ellie as a substitute. But in the show, I don't get that feeling by the end of it, and I think it is because I didn't get enough time with those 2 characters together. Like, I would not substitute the Bill and Frank episode. I think that's a fantastic episode of TV.
Of course.
Which is why it kind of upsets me that it does detract from
I just think the
Ellie and
series
Joel's
needed
story.
to be a couple of episodes longer. That's what I'm
I
talking
agree
about with
with
the
that.
pacing. I think 9 episodes was just a little bit too short. I think it needed to just be a little bit longer.
In terms
So I
of...
don't have a problem with the pacing for the most part. I just would have liked the finale to be a good 10-15 minutes longer. Then I wouldn't have any problem with the pacing.
I
Actually,
thought the
that's my only
the
issue.
finale's length was really weird because, like, how many shows have 9 episodes? You know what I mean? Like, 9 episodes is
The idea was
weird number.
The idea was there was going to be 10, but episode 1. There's a reason why episode 1 is like 80 minutes long, because that was originally going to be 2 episodes. But HBO said, well, if this is the first episode, how are we going to not show Ellie in the first episode? So they kind of just clumped episodes 1 and 2 together, which is why it's so long, and that turns 10 episodes into 9.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's really weird. Like, I really feel like even the finale should have been similar to that. Like, we should have had...
I didn't think it needed to be 2 episodes.
No, but I think it needed to be a bit
few
more
minutes
than
longer.
what it was. I think the finale's really short because it kind of starts and then it's kind of over very quickly. And I think it still goes for like 40, 45 minutes, something like that.
45 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, it's about 43 minutes.
But it
like
doesn't
that.
feel like that. Like, it feels like it goes by so quickly. Like, I remember the episode started and they're like fucking just sit there chatting away. Joel's talking about his daughter. And the next thing I know, bloody Joel's shooting down the place, you know? I do want to talk about that scene. But, like, that's just how I felt watching it. I was just like, wait, hang on a minute. This feels like it's just jumped way too quickly to this.
When you get to the end of episode 9, you're kind of like, what could they have cut to... You start, like, doing, like, the little breakdowns, like, okay, yeah, so looking at it now, the Frank and Bill story really isn't needed in terms to make the final story better. And then you're like, oh, Left Behind kind of wasn't... You kind of need it, you kind of don't, at least not the way it was. In terms of the things I would actually cut, it's the beginning of episode 9.
Anna, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't give a
yeah,
shit
yeah.
on how Ellie was born, or how she got her immunity. In fact, I actually don't like that they showed how she got her immunity. That kind of detracts from it to me.
I don't think it detracts. I just think, all right, cool.
I think it's. I just think it's. I just think it's a weird scene.
I don't like the fact that Ashley Johnson sounded exactly like 14-year-old Ellie giving birth to Ellie, and that freaked me the fuck out. I wasn't a fan.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's just because you spend a lot of time playing as Ellie, so I guess her grunts become very recognizable.
Yeah, and it's kind of disturbing.
I mean, to be
down
fair
it.
though, how Ellie sounds at 14-year-olds is just how Ashley Johnson sounds just in general. So, like, I mean, yeah, I guess it's just because it is so recognizable. And they didn't show her face straight away either. Like, but as soon as you see her, like, you could just tell. You're like, oh, that's Ellie, that's Ashley Johnson,
My partner was semi paying attention, and she was like, "What the fuck, is Ellie pregnant?" I'm like, in a way.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
But yeah, like, I mean, overall, I think the series is decent, and like, I don't really have any major criticisms of the series. There's nothing that like made me be like, oh, that's weird. I think the only moment for me where I was just kind of like, I don't know about that, was the changes they made in episode 2. First off, love the concept of
The mycelium.
I love the concepts that's like, if you touch like the root or whatever, like that attracts the zombies, like they're kind of all interconnected. Love that concept. I'm just not a fan of how that was then utilized in that episode, and also why that's never came up again after that episode.
Well, it makes sense to
No,
establish
that's not
it
in the
for
game,
lore
by the way.
purposes,
Like
and then also be like, oh, but our characters are smart to try and avoid that. So I don't mind that too much. Being like, okay, we've established it, it happens, but it's like we're not going to show it again because we've also established that our characters are quite smart, and we're going to have them in more rural areas to avoid such like things like that.
yeah,
I
guess
personally
so.
think a good place. I feel like they should have used it one more time, and I think the best place
Yeah.
would have maybe been at the beginning of episode 9. Have a brief
Yeah,
action
perhaps.
sequence of them getting into Salt Lake City,
Yeah,
triggering the
one of
mycelium.
my criticisms on episode 9, to kind of make the pacing a little bit, fulfilling, would probably be have one sequence, even if it's a short one with like one infected or something
Yeah.
like that, just to kind of recontextualize why the importance of a cure could be important, because that's the whole point that Ellie's trying to go
I
after.
didn't even think
I
through
don't
it
mind
in
that
that
there's
fact. That's a good
yeah,
point.
I didn't mind that there aren't any infected in that episode besides the flashback, or that there aren't many infected in the latter half of the season, because that's the kind of the idea is that our characters are smart enough to try and go for more rural areas where they can avoid infected, rather than be like, oh yeah, let's just go through this tunnel with a bloater in it. But I probably would have liked just one encounter with an infected in the final episode for those reasons, just to kind of make it be like, oh, okay, so I got no complaints there. One thing I just want to say, 'cause I think I was on the same topic, I'd wager, is that I actually am really impressed with a lot of the more controversial, or maybe not controversial, but a lot of the bigger changes from the game to the show actually fix a lot of plot holes in the game. So those plot holes don't exist in the show, which actually kind of shocked me. Is so, like, for example, they explore the mycelium in episode 2, and they use that, and they establish that and then show it off by replacing all of the Fedra soldiers with infected. And then in the game, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to fight Fedra now because I spent the last hour fighting clickers, and now we need a more change of pace for gameplay reasons. It's like, oh, we're changing all the enemies from clickers to now Fedra soldiers. You go, okay, for a game, this works better. And then the show looks at it and goes, hold on a second. Why the fuck are Fedra soldiers chasing a pair of smugglers several miles outside the quarantine zone? Wouldn't it just be easy just be like, they'll probably get themselves killed, just don't worry about them? And so the show goes, all right, cool. What if we use an infected scene instead to kind of pay off the setup with the mycelium
fully agree with that,
lore bit. Yeah. And then a second one would be a lot of people are kind of iffy on the inclusion of Marlene and Perry and like actually giving like character development and lore background to the hunters in what was Pittsburgh, now Kansas City. And I'm not going to defend it by saying like, oh, because thematic reasons it kind of sets up how season 2 story going to be, because that's a big thing that happens in part 2. But also, when you're doing the sniper section in the game, it's like, are these hunters really going to chase 4 people across bridges, across entire cities, and through suburbs with a fucking like armored gun turret jeep, for food and maybe some spare clothes? Whereas like the show goes, oh no, like the sniper in the thing is connected to the hunters, and they're after Henry for personal reasons. I go, okay, that makes sense. So the type of thing where, because it's a game, you kind of just go, oh, cool, a cool like gameplay thing. It's a change of pace that makes me enjoy the game more. But like if you try and think about it too hard, you kind of forget how many plot holes are in the game that the show just fixes. Another reason is a lot of people talk about how there aren't any infected in the David episode. There's a scene in the game that we all know where when you meet David, while you're waiting for James to come back with the penicillin, you have to fight a horde of infected. And now in the game, it's like, okay, this actually gives me a very active reason to be more trusting towards David, because he's by your side fighting infected with you. Unless you're playing on Grounded, in which case, fuck that level. I fucking hate that level on Grounded. But I digress. And then the show cuts that out, and people go, oh, they cut out the bit with the infected. Now there's less infected scenes in the back half of the season. I go, yeah, but the show probably looks at that infected fight and goes, hold on a second. Are you telling me that this gated community of like ritualistic cannibals with women and children, like lots of like fair few children, are living in a resort, like a remote resort in the middle of bum fucking nowhere that you could just walk into, like Joel walks into and he's injured, and Ellie falls into when the horse dies, and they're literally like a couple of short miles away from a horde of infected, in which a solid amount of them are clickers and a few of them are and one of them is a bloater. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of doesn't make sense now that you think about it. Whereas the show goes, oh yeah, there's no infected around here. It's remote. There's no going to be any infected trying to that's any danger to this group of unarmed group of with men, women, and children. Because I'm like, yeah, all right, that kind of makes more sense then. So that I like how people are like, oh, what about this and this is different from the game, and I'm like, yeah, but as much as I love the games, and I love the games to death, they're both like my top number one favorite game of all time. But like, it's one of those things where like, for gameplay purposes, you kind of have to just kind of gloss over plot holes and go, oh, I can forgive that because it's a great game. Because anything's a fractal if you bitch half enough about it. So the show goes, oh, we don't have that luxury of everyone's going to love the game, because the game is, not an active thing you can have in the show. So being like, all right, we have an opportunity to take some of the plot holes that even all of us gamers kind of glossed over and go, okay, we fixed that. So the infected scenes replacing Fedra in episode 2 is an improvement because it fixes a plot hole with the game. Having Melanie Linsky's character have a personal reason to go after Sam other than like, oh, stragglers have food and shoes on them, is far more realistic and covers a plot hole there. And then having no infected in episode 8, even though people are like, oh, but that's one of the best things in the game. I'm like, yeah, but if you think about it too hard, it doesn't make sense, actually. So I think the show, it was pretty wise to cut that realistically.
So in short, the TV audience is 10 times more picky and need to calm the fuck down on story.
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps. Although, with the discussions about part 2, gamers can be equally as picky. Fractals, any story could be a fractal if you bitch hard enough.
Yep. I get you.
I don't like Tessa's death scene. I think it's better in the games, but you know, I like you just yeah. Do you know what? I've just genuinely realized I just don't care, actually. You were literally just talking about this, and I'm like, you know what? I don't actually give enough of a shit about this to even talk about why I don't even really like it. Like, I think you're bringing up some valid points there. Like, obviously, you know, things have to be different adapting it. I was gonna, like, retort back and be like, well, no, like, I think the death is shit, but then, you know, as you both stopped talking, then I just realized, you know what? I don't actually care enough to actually bother arguing this. So I'm just gonna leave it.
I agree fully.
I just think it's a weird scene. I'm not gonna lie, it's a weird scene. That's my main.
Oh, the kiss, 100%. I find that really goddamn weird. I understand it.
Yeah,
to a point,
it was
but it's
weird.
really weird.
Like, what? Why? I guess like it's designed to kind of I guess show how this version of the infected like how they
more
infect
hive-minded.
people. Yeah, I guess it's designed to show that, but it's just a weird change that to me it just felt completely unnecessary. Like, I have no problem with the idea of the infected being like it being infected rather than being the Fedra soldiers. That's fine, that's whatever, but that part of the scene was just such a bizarre like addition where I literally finished the episode and I genuinely could not, like, it was baffling to me. I could not understand what the point of that was. I was just sitting there like that is a thing that actually just happened. Like, it's like, this isn't a parody of The Last of Us. Like, this is a thing that actually happened for real, and I was just baffled by it. Like, I literally spent a couple of minutes just sitting there just being like, what the fuck just happened?
One thing I've caught with this show that doesn't happen with a lot of others is
I suppose I did end up talking about it in the end there, did I?
you did. Around when it comes to things like that, a lot of people's answer I noticed in forums and things after episodes were like, "Oh, if you watch the director's commentary, they explain." I'm like, if they have to explain it in the director's commentary, they didn't do a good enough job. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean that's.
But what if I could pick up on it before watching the director's commentary?
If you can do that, that's good. That means they did all right. But
because I didn't have any problem with that. I was taken aback. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, it was. I instantly thought it was a great idea. I was taken aback a little bit, but then I kind of thought about it and go, well, it's not a runner that does it. It's certainly not a clicker. It's a stalker, and stalkers are technically the smartest of the infected. So if it kind of just sees that someone is like not fighting, then it doesn't have to try so hard to like bite them. That's the way
So the way I thought of it, and the way I think it might have been explained in the director's commentary, is that it can sense that Tess is already infected, and it's fully bringing her into the ranks.
Tries to like speed it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe, honestly, maybe the real answer here is it was just horny. He decided to get in on a bit of action.
Yeah, it's gonna get done.
I mean, good on him, eh? Good on him, right? That's what I say. Do you know what part I did like though? And I actually really like this a lot. We're gonna skip back to the final episode here. I really liked how they presented the hospital scene of Joel mowing down everyone. I just liked that it was like, it wasn't too long. It was just like a bunch of kind of like, it was kind of like a montage almost. But it was like, it had like this really like slow kind of rendition of the Last of Us theme playing over it.
Yeah.
I absolutely
like a melancholy
version. I love how like cold Joel was in that, like when that soldier was surrendering and he shot him anyway after he disarmed himself and surrendered. Like, I think that's I really enjoyed how that scene was kind of put forward, because I know in the game obviously you have the option to kind of just stealth your way through that, and you know, you could probably I mean, I don't know, you played the game a lot more, Jacob, than I have. You could probably get through that without killing anyone, I guess, but...
I think you can skip most of it. I don't know how to get through the first floor without killing anyone, but as soon as you get past that first floor, I can sneak through the rest of the hospital quite easily.
Yeah. I like that, and, I like, obviously The Last of Us Part 2 made canon that, Joel shot the doctor there.
Or Jerry.
Yeah, yep. But so I don't know. I like that in the show, like he just starts talking and then he just like fucking just boom. Not even a thought put into that. He just fucking shoots him.
Well, let's say that you're doing like a no death run and you can stealth the entire hospital, then the surgeon is the one person you must kill, because even if you don't. If you don't shoot him, if you just try to walk up to Ellie, an animation will play out where Joel will just take the scalpel off him and stab him in the throat.
Shit, really?
So that's the one person you must kill.
I'm remembering that wrong then, because I don't know, in my head for some reason I had it like you could choose to kill him or not.
No, you can't. He must die every time.
Interesting. Oh, there you go then. I mean, to be fair, I've killed him every time as well. So
same.
But
gotta save my baby girl.
I kind of thought that might have been like a choice, but there you go then. Oh well, there you go. I stand corrected. Either way, I still like how the show presents that scene. Joel's just like fucking. He like literally just starts talking.
He doesn't even look at him.
Fucking shoots him.
I will let you take her. He just like at the corner of his eye, doesn't even look at him.
All right, Laura Bailey, it's your turn. Are you gonna let her go, or am I gonna kill you too? How do we feel about Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey? I think we're all gonna have the same opinion on this, but
job, I think.
Yeah, very impressed.
I think Pedro's Joel is a bit different from main Joel. He's a lot less angry, or at least visibly angry. He's more softer, I guess, while still being an absolute dick.
Yeah, it is. Like, I definitely will say it is a different characterization to the game. Not too different, where it's like, like that's not Joel. Like, it's
not
100% Joel, but it's also not like it's not the game Joel as well.
Yeah. But it's still a close enough rendition that I think it was a good job. And Bella was a bit weird in the first episode, I think. Got it right in the first scene, kind of died off for the rest of the episode for me, and then for the rest of the series she was pretty damn on point.
I thought that way at first time watching it, but I think my problem with the first couple episodes is the fact that I had to get used to the fact that they're saying words from the game, like lines from the game word for word, but differently. And I kind of had to get used to that. But once I did, I didn't have a problem with it. It's because I noticed that I had that issue watching it week to week, and then binge watching all of it a second time at my parents' house was like, yep, I got no problem with this. So I reckon it's just something that I, as a viewer, had to get used to, rather than a criticism of their performances.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say I like them, but yeah, I completely agree. It was something that I definitely kind of had to get used to quite a bit. Especially with Bella Ramsey, just because I think it's not so much anything to do with her performance, because she's really good. I think it's just because she just doesn't sound like Ellie, so like it is that kind of like adjustment period of like having to go, okay, I don't know, Ellie. I just think Ashley Johnson just has such a very distinct sounding voice.
Yeah.
That I think it's
very like, oh, I know that voice. It's very unmistakable.
Yeah, so like, I mean, just in terms of the show, it was just kind of, I guess it's really hard for, it doesn't matter who plays Ellie. It's always going to be, I guess, be a bit of an adjustment. I think Pedro Pascal, kind of works really well for Joel, actually. I think there's a lot of lines that he delivers them pretty much the same as the game in a lot of ways. But also it is also very, like the whole thing, I can't help but thinking the whole time. I'm like, oh, now all we need to do is just put a little filter over his voice, and he'd be the Mandalorian. You know what I mean? Like he still sounds like Pedro Pascal, but I think there was a lot of times where I'm like, oh, you're getting the sound of Joel there. I don't know. I just really liked both of their performances. And I liked. I think I like them. I think like you said, Lewin. I think I like them for different reasons to why I like the game versions of the character. I think there's different reasons for why they're both. I mean, they're both good, but like, yeah, there's just different reasons as to why they're good.
It also the episode 8 weirdly actually highlighted me, as much as he can be an absolute douche, of why I like Troy Baker quite a lot. Because having Troy Baker in episode 8, just using his natural speaking voice, and then me going, he sounds fucking nothing like Joel. Even though it is Joel, I was like, damn, Troy Baker is good at his job.
Yeah, no, Troy Baker's excellent, and I think his inclusion into the series was way better than Ashley Johnson's.
I agree.
Yeah. More meaty. He's through, no pun intended, of course, because he was in more of the episode than Ashley Johnson.
He had more of a role to play, and I think it was a good little role for him. I think,
James was a decent little character.
Yeah, because that character's not in the game.
I love how people,
right? Because the game very much.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Oh fuck me.
Yeah, he's played by Ruben Langdon, who does Dante in all the Devil May Cry games.
Nice. I was a little sad that Nolan North never showed up.
Yeah, but then again, he showed up in the Uncharted movie, so I guess it kind of balances out. But what I was about to say is, I love how a bunch of different people are like, "Oh, Troy Baker plays a new character," and I'm like, "No, he doesn't. If you played the game, he's James." Even Troy Baker forgot who James was when they go, "Oh, we've got a role for you." But yeah,
I find it. I find it just to circle back to Nolan North in Uncharted for a second. I love how he just casually says, "Oh yeah, something like that happened to me once."
To me once,
and I'm like, "What the fuck? What are you doing? Like, what kind of character are you supposed to be that you can just casually say that?" And obviously, like, I get that it's just a nod for the audience and it's just a funny, but I'm like, that's such a dumb line. But it's funny. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I thought it was funny. It's funny and stupid. Anyway, moving on. Just like that whole movie. Anyway, Last of Us, yes, good tennis. I don't really have much more to say about it, to be honest. I liked it. I probably wouldn't watch it again. And for me personally, I'm not really into season 2, because I don't really like that story as it is anyway. So, like, I'm not really that invested in continuing watching the show. But having that been said, you know, I might, you know. It'll be a while before season 2 rolls around, so I'm looking forward to when Pedro Pascal goes golfing. That's going to be fun. I'm genuinely interested to see how they do it, because The Last of Us Part 2 is also a bigger game than the first one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Goddamn.
It's twice as long. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it's going to be interesting how they adapt it, whether they do day by day, like the game, or whether they interject it like Ellie Abby. I
would say they would do it that second way, because it's twice as long as the first one. They're saying like, oh, it will span multiple seasons. I don't think it's a good idea, even though, you know, Lara clearly likes Abby's storyline better than Ellie, but like a lot of the fans will disagree and be like, oh, why do I have to play as Abby or this and that? So like having the decision to be like, oh yeah, 80% of season 3 just doesn't have Bella Ramsey or Pedro Pascal at all in it, and it's all about this completely new character that was introduced in season 2. I'm like, yeah, that is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And someone tried to be like, they could set up the mid-game cliffhanger as the season 2 cliffhanger. I'm like, that is a fucking terrible idea, because in the game it's like, okay, it's not that big of a kick in the balls because you only have to play for another 8 hours as a character, experience her character arc, and then you're back to where you were. It's not that big of a deal, but having to be like, all right, now, but for TV audiences, not only do you have to wait at least a year, maybe two, for another season, but then we won't even start that new season where you left off, and you have to go through another like fucking 7 or 8 episodes just to get back to the cliffhanger from and it's like, that is a terrible idea. So like I'd imagine they would do they would do like Jackson as if like the first 2 episodes, and then be like Ellie day 1, Abby day 1, Ellie day 2, Abby day 2, and then maybe like cliffhanger, and then season 3 would be Ellie day 3, Abby day 3, and then the Santa Barbara sections.
It also heavily
having a bit
I think it would also mitigate a problem from the game that a lot of people that probably caused half the hate of the game. Of you get through Ellie, you get through Ellie, you get through Ellie, and if you hate Abby enough, if you're one of the people who has no care in the world about seeing anything to do with that, you just turn off the game there. You've spent 10 hours as Ellie, you're stopping the game there. That is probably the worst decision I think the game made, because it did stop a lot of people from fully experiencing it and even trying to comprehend. So if you kind of do it where you're like, oh yeah, episode 3, Abby, episode 4, Ellie, it kind of mitigates that bit where they have less of a chance to turn off.
Yeah, but I know it does help with the audience trying to garner more empathy. It's far more easy to gain empathy for an active character that you're playing as if you experience their whole arc in one chunk and then move on to someone else. But I think not only is that it doesn't have to be exactly that way in a show, but also another reason why it's that way in the game is because of the upgrade system. Because if you try and like spend all of your pills and parts on upgrading all of your things for Ellie and Abby simultaneously, you have to keep track of like which upgrades go for which gun and which character has which gun, and it's just a pain in the ass that you just don't want to deal with. Whereas if all their levels are chunked together, you go, oh, I can spend this 10 hours or 8 hours of the game upgrading Ellie's stuff, and then I switch to Abby and I can focus on that. And because, of course, it's not a fucking video game, you don't have to focus on character upgrades and weapon upgrades and shit. That problem with having the game structured that way is completely eliminated when you adapt it to TV, and you can just go, all right, cool, if we want to do more, break it up, go this way, this one, then go Ellie, Abby, and this, so on and so forth. Like, basically what I'm trying to say is like, all of those problems that people have with the game doing it, even though it's done for probably the better in terms of gameplay sakes, that problem is alleviated when you no longer make it a game and you'd have to fucking upgrade weapons and keep track of who owns who and what goes where.
No, I want them to upgrade weapons in the show.
I want them to upgrade weapons too. I just don't want them to.
I want every episode to have a scene where fucking Ellie goes to an upgrade table and bloody upgrades her guns. All right, that's what I want from season 2.
I wouldn't mind that. I just don't want fucking non-sequitur scenes every 5 minutes of Ellie picking up a fucking jar of pills and be like, "Oh, I know what to do with this." Like, no, you don't.
Can hear better now.
That has the same energy as doing a first-person sequence in Doom. It's the same energy. It's in the game, so we have to put it in the show. We got upgrade
just
tables.
Imagine fucking Tommy's like, Ellie, we don't have time, and Ellie's just like, I'm making it hot rod pink, Tommy. Calm down.
Oh, nice. Yeah, well, look, I don't have much more to say about it. I enjoyed the show overall. It definitely surprised me with, I don't know if it surprised me, because I kind of, with Neil Druckmann involved, I was kind of expecting it to be pretty faithful. I wasn't expecting it to kind of go off the rails. So I don't know if surprised me is the right wording to use there, but like it was definitely better than I was expecting it to be. Especially as someone who was like very much like going into it being like, you know what, like it's fine. Like especially after that first episode where I was just kind of left going, yeah, it's all right. I kind of was really surprised by how much I enjoyed the second half of the series. I really enjoyed kind of that from that episode 4 point onwards. I kind of enjoyed it a lot more. I was never at any point. I was never into it to the point where I was like, I finished an episode and I'd be like, oh my god, I have to watch the next episode. And I think
I was.
see, I wasn't, and I was watching them all back to back. I kind of just finished an episode and went, okay, cool, I'll watch the next episode tomorrow. Or, like, I'll watch this one later. You know, I was never like, oh my god, I have to watch this. Where, weirdly enough, the Resident Evil series, I watched the entirety of that in, like, a day. And it wasn't even because I felt like I had to watch it. I was just like, I've got nothing else to do. I'll just watch through the whole series. And I'm enjoying it enough to want to do that all in one day. In retrospect, maybe I should have spent my day doing something else, but, you know, it is what it is.
But see, what you seem pretty like content but not impressed is what the vibe I'm getting from the show. Whereas I'm impressed because if I was to be talking about books and then their movies, it's like, oh, I can read both the book and the movie. I could watch the show and the video game. I can listen to music and I can have both the original and a cover version in this and that. I don't mind having both. So that's why at the very least I was satisfied with this adaptation, because I don't mind having a different version, even if it's a version that, yeah, but the other one is better. I actually quite enjoy having this slightly inferior version as well. But I think what impressed me so much is that, isn't it just nice to have a video game adaptation of this prestige at all? When like we had a bunch of live action Resident Evil stuff, and I don't think any of the I'm not a big fan of any of the multimedia Resident Evil content, to be honest. And then Uncharted movie I enjoyed, but it was kind of it didn't have it didn't have the high octane excitement that I would expect an adaptation of Uncharted tried to do, even though I quite that movie. And then you get ones like Max Payne, where it's like the game is like this really nice hybrid.
No, it doesn't exist.
It was like the game of Max Payne is like, it's like this hybrid of what's the word I'm trying to say?
It's
you're really giving me some editing work later on here, aren't you?
Sorry, no, sorry. It's
noir. You think it's the word noir?
Yes, it's like a neo-noir style on top of like high octane John Woo inspired action, and then has like the very stylized, like very over the top kind of like anime style, like you expect from like how if you watch the lobby sequence in The Matrix and then compare it to action sequences in the original Ghost in the Shell and stuff like that. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of like, what if the Maltese Falcon was a John Wick movie that took influence from Ghost in the Shell? That's pretty much what the Max Payne game is. And then the movie goes, how about we make a really boring as fuck, like good looking from a cinematography standpoint, but like a boring, uninteresting as fuck, slow, bland mid-2000s action movie where half the movie is in slow-mo and you'd be like, look, it's just like the game. And I'm like, you didn't capture fucking anything from the game. So at the very least...
No, they had the drug. The drug was correct.
But at least with The Last of Us, even though I still like the game better, I'm like, I've been waiting decades for a video game adaptation. Just be like, instead of some fucking bigwig who has no idea what he's doing, giving the director's job to some hotshot nobody with a chip on his shoulder, being like, yeah, you shoot 'em up games, yeah, what? You're thinking this way. This is the first time where a prestige network like HBO or something, instead of taking advantage of an IP purely for monetary purposes, reaches out to a game and goes, let me help you translate this story to a different medium instead of just making something that fans will flock to and will occupy non-fans' time for 2 hours and that's it. And I'm like, thank you. Can we get at least this amount of effort from every game adaptation, for Christ's sakes?
for every Last of Us, we have 10 UA balls. Or UA balls,
yes,
or however the fuck you say his name.
Yeah, precisely my point, yeah.
Well, I, for one, I do like the Tomb Raider movies, so,
Of course. I really enjoyed the Alicia Vikander one, but I probably would have enjoyed it more if it was rated R and didn't pointlessly put in Lara's father.
I did also, like, the Angelina Jolie ones are pretty good as well, but, it's neither here nor there. I mean, there's good video game adaptations, It's like...
Yeah, I like... I think Detective Pikachu is actually better than the game because the game fucking puts me to sleep.
I've never played the game, but I do enjoy the movie.
You don't have to.
It's not a well put together movie in a plot sense, I guess.
No,
but it's a fun movie.
But it's fun. Yeah, precisely.
And that is all we can ask for.
And everyone will bring up fucking Arcane and stuff like that, but from what I understand, like it's not. Yeah, it's not an adaptation of. It's not translating the story of a League of Legends arc to a different medium. Like The Last of Us is translating the story of the first game to TV. It's kind of a different thing. It's still equally as impressive. It's just like, yeah, it's not. It's not an adaptation.
Is very loosely based on some League of Legends lore, but it also changes a lot of the lore in the series. So yeah, it's the same as like Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Like Cyberpunk Edge Runners isn't.
I was about to bring that one up too. Yeah,
like it's just an original story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking good too, but like it is just it's not adapting anything. So like they don't really count as video game adaptions. But I mean, like, look, I think the worst video game thing I've ever watched, if I'm being completely honest, is still the Assassin's Creed movie. So
I highly disagree.
Yeah, but like it completely misses it misses the point of Assassin's Creed completely.
Jacob's already brought up Max
First
Payne.
of all, yeah,
I
don't think you can get technically worse than the I don't think you can get technically worse than the Uwe Ball movies, but for my money, in terms of taking a game property that literally writes the film version itself by being based on being heavily inspired by movies, and just not doing any of that is probably the most egregious to me.
I mean, look,
Max Payne 3 is my favorite game of all time. I was so excited when I found out there was a movie, then there was Mark Wahlberg, and then the movie existed further. It's just, there's a reason I haven't watched Uncharted yet.
Like, whenever you put Mark Wahlberg in anything, you can definitely expect that, I mean, he's gonna play Mark Wahlberg in it, I guess.
Yeah, I'll give you this. How fucked up is this, right? As horribly miscast as Mark Wahlberg is as Sully, he's a better Sully than he is Max Payne.
Oh,
fuck me dead.
I mean, he's certainly...
James McCaffrey is the only one who can play Max Payne.
Yeah.
He's...
Absolutely.
I mean, he certainly plays some characters. I'll give you that.
We have... racist American. Oh no, that's just Mark Wahlberg. He played a cop in that one movie.
I just...
Yeah, I like The Departed. It's a great movie.
I meant the
Do you
other
know
guys,
what's-
which was also actually a
do you know
pretty
what's
good
some
movie.
video game adaptations that I have literally never seen? I've never seen any of the Hitman movies.
I've watched both of them, unless there's 3 of them. Is there 3 of them?
Fucking don't know.
I
I know there's
You know
all
what-
I
you
know
know
is
what?
there's
I got-
Hitman, and then I know there's Agent 47.
for the longest
Yeah.
time, did not like Timothy Olyphant because of Hitman. I was like, this is a garbage movie, and you're not a good actor. And then I saw Timothy Olyphant and everything else. I'm like, fuck, you're gorgeous. But that movie put me off of him for so long.
Yeah, I've never seen them. I've been wanting to watch them one day just for shits and gigs, but I've never
Agent
gotten
47
around
I
to
don't
it.
is-
fucking need to. I have the new Assassination trilogy. I got the fucking Xbox 360 games. I don't fucking need to watch a fucking 2-hour movie from mid 2000s.
Yeah, I've got the I recently bought the World of Assassination rebrand Hitman 3 on
Oh, okay, yeah,
Steam,
yeah,
to play the freelancer mode. And to play the
Yeah.
fucking games, because I've only played Hitman 1 and I played Hitman 2 on stream. And I've never played Hitman 3, so I was like, oh yeah, I'll finish off Hitman 3, and then, but I thought it'd be good just to get them all packaged together. And I've been playing a bit of the freelancer mode with that, which has been kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, that's really it. That's all I've got to say about it, honestly.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's fucking wrap it up then. So as I said up at the start of the episode, this episode has been split into 2 different separate episodes because of just how much recording we have. So that was our last for Spoilercast, and in the next episode, Jacob Lewin and myself will be discussing all of the other things that we talked about during that recording session. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming up very soon. And of course, with this, there's no Lewin here to take us out. So thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you drop a like, and of course subscribe to the channel, where we will be uploading more episodes throughout the rest of this year. Very exciting stuff coming up for the show, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.